Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Synced Up Designs Beyond the Basics video. In this one, we're going to be learning how to tape our rifle, which just like the flag taping video is going to be another extremely crucial skill that everyone in the color guard activity should know if you're wanting to keep up the overall longevity of your equipment. And like usual, before we get into anything, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel, and go ahead and hit that bell icon so you can stay up to date with any of our future uploads. Anyways, with that taken care of, let's go learn how to tape our rifle. So before we get into the actual taping process, I first want to go over all the materials you're going to need to do so. First and foremost, you're going to want a roll of white electrical tape, and then you possibly want a roll of black electrical tape. This is for anyone that has the standard black bolt, white body, and black strap color combination for the gun. Some people have silver bolts with white straps or a variation of those. So at the very least, you're going to want a roll of white tape. You may also want a roll of black tape on top of that. It's really just aesthetically for the second roll. You're also going to want a roll of strapping tape. This is eventually going to go underneath the electrical tape, which I'll go into more detail about in a second. Along with that, you're going to want a pair of scissors, and the reason you want these for sure is because the strapping tape does not rip easily, so you want a pair of scissors to help cut that. Then you're also going to need both a Phillips head screwdriver and a flat head screwdriver. Mine comes as a little 2-in-1 combo, so I just have the one, but just make sure you have both screwdriver heads. And then lastly, the star of the show, you're going to want a rifle. Just do a quick double check and make sure that you have all of these pieces included on your rifle. You should have a bolt with 2 screws connecting it to the actual body of the rifle. And you're also going to want to make sure it has a strap with 2 screws on each end of it, making sure that it's nice and tight. There's also swivel pieces connecting the strap to the gun itself. So we have the swivel, the screw, and the strap. And then lastly, just double check and make sure that there's padding on the butt of the gun and on the nose of the gun. Once you've double checked to make sure that you have all of these materials, you should be good to go to start your taping process. So the first step of the taping process is actually going to be taking my gun apart. And what I mean by that is I'm going to take both the bolt and the strap off of the gun, so that way I can easily get to the body of the gun and tape the first layer of that on first before putting these pieces back on later. So what you'll do is you're going to take first your Phillips head screwdriver, and you're going to unscrew the 2 screws that are keeping the bolt in place. Once you've taken both of those screws out, you can take your bolt directly off of the gun and just go ahead and set that off to the side with your screws to make sure that you don't lose either of them. We'll return back to these a little bit later in the taping process. After you've taken the bolt off, you're going to turn your gun over and take the strap off. We're going to leave the 2 swivel pieces at the very end of the strap on. All we're going to do is unscrew the screws that are actually in the strap, and then we're going to take it off from there to go through the next process. So I'm going to switch over to my flathead screwdriver to be able to unscrew the screws in the strap. And once I've taken both of the screws off, I'm going to place them off to the side somewhere where I'm not going to lose them. And then I can just pull the strap out from the swivels and set it off to the side as well. Now I have a completely bare rifle, and I'm good to go into the first layer of actual taping. So I mentioned earlier that the strapping tape is actually going to be going underneath the electrical tape when we put it on the gun. So that means that this is going to be the first layer that goes on the rifle. The reason we do this is because it gives the gun a little bit of extra support and helps make sure that it lasts longer over time. When it comes to taping the body of the rifle, there are 4 main sections that we just need to be aware of. That is the nose, about 2 to 3 inches from the edge, wrapping around it, and then also on top of it. This first swivel section, about, again, 2 to 3 inches of wrap around. We then do the middle section of the gun, which will be about 2 to 3 inches from this edge of the bolt to 2 to 3 inches from the other edge of the bolt. And then lastly, the butt, which again, we will be wrapping over the top and around as we go through. So what I'll do is I'll take my strapping tape and I'll pull strips out, cut it off with my scissors, and wrap around as we go through on the nose, the swivel, the middle section, and the butt. I'll first cover the top of the nose and then wrap around, and then when I get to the butt, I'll do the same thing, covering the top with about 2 strips and then wrap around as we go through. When you do the wraparounds on any section of the gun, I would recommend doing one row, cutting it off, and then starting a next row below it, as opposed to doing one continuous line of tape, just because strapping tape is a little fidgety and it'll cause a bunch of extra wrinkles, and we really want to try and keep this as smooth as possible. It's going to be a longer process, but it'll make your tape job look a lot nicer. And there's my first strapping tape section done. I still made sure to cover every part of the gun, even though I did individual rows, and I only did about 2 to 3 inches. So now that I finished this section, I'm going to continue that same process all the way down in the next 3 sections of the gun. When I do the swivels, I am good to tape over the screw section of that, but when I am going into the tape, I want to make sure I let this swivel stay free and I don't tape over it, because we need to be able to snake the strap back into that later. So make sure that when you're taping this, screw is okay, but swivel has to remain free. And as you can see, I have taped over the screw here, but the swivel still is not taped down. And I did about 2 inches or so on either side of that swivel. So the next section we'll be taping will be the middle section of the rifle. Again, we're going to be starting about 2 inches in front of the bolt and ending about 2 inches behind the bolt. When it comes to the taping process, we have 2 areas that we want to be a little bit more aware of. The first one is going to be this lip where we dip down into the bolt section. When I go over that, I am actually going to overlap my tape to where it's hanging off the edge ever so slightly, and then I'm just going to press it down whenever I finish that row. It won't look super great, but again, we're going to be putting a bolt on top of this, so you're not going to see it once you're done with the taping process. The next section you want to be aware of is where the neck is, just because of the curvature of the rifle. It's going to make it a little bit awkward to put the tape down. Just try your best to make that tape as smooth as possible, so that way when you go over it with electrical tape, it still is smooth in the end. You may get a couple wrinkles, and that's okay. Just try your best to keep it as smooth when you're going through that. So this is what I mean when I say overlapping over the edge of the bolt section. So that way from here, we can just press it down like so. This will help make sure that we cover every bare part of the rifle with strapping tape, and nothing is left untaped as we go through. Again, this will be covered by a bolt, so it doesn't matter if it looks pretty or not. And there is the entire middle section of the rifle tapes. And then the last section we'll cover will be the butt. This is going to be the exact same process as the nose and the first swivel. We're going to start with the very top of it, covering over the top and then wrapping around. And then when we get to the swivel, we're good to cover the screw, but we want to leave the swivel section free so that way the strap can be put into it later. And there is our strapping tape on the butt of the gun. You'll notice that I covered the very top, that cushion section. And then when I still taped the screw, I made sure to leave the swivel free as we went through that. So now that we have our strapping tape on, the next step of this taping process will be adding electrical tape on every section of the gun that has strapping tape. So we'll be doing the exact same process where we cover everything the exact same way, the top of the butt, top of the nose, covering the screw but not the swivel, and the overlap on the edge of the bolt right here. We're just going to be doing it with electrical tape. We don't necessarily have to do this in individual rows like we did the strapping tape, just because this is a little bit easier to manage as we're going down, and we can adjust it as needed when we do this singular piece of tape wrapping around the section of the rifle. And there is a fully taped gun with the white electrical tape. After you've done this, just go ahead and double check and make sure that there's no open spots in the tape where you see a bare section of the gun where it should be taped. And then along with this, as I was going through and taping it, wherever my white electrical tape starts is actually a little bit past where the strapping tape underneath starts. So my white electrical tape is here, strapping tape is about right here, maybe a centimeter off. And I do that just to make sure that I'm fully covering that strapping tape and there's no nothing that can be seen from that outside of the white electrical tape. So now that we have both base layers of tape on the body of our rifle, we are good to go ahead and reassemble it, putting the bolt back on top and the strap back underneath. I know that we covered the screw holes where our bolt will go with tape, but that's not going to stop us from being able to reattach it. The screws will just pierce through and we should be able to put it back together with ease. So go ahead and reassemble your gun. And there's our gun reassembled. Now that we have both the bolt and the strap back on the rifle, the next step we're gonna do is cover the swivels with electrical tape. We were trying to avoid these earlier so that way we could snake the strap back into the rifle, but now that it's on there and it's secure, we're good to wrap that up with tape to make sure it stays secure over time. And when I do this, I like to overlap into the strap ever so slightly, again, just to make sure that this whole section is nice and secure. It'll also keep your strap from moving around where the screw is over time. Now that the swivels are nice and tight in place, the last thing that we want to do is cover the screws that are on the strap with black tape to keep it from messing with us while we're spinning or rubbing off the paint on the gun underneath it. So this is more of like an aesthetic and a safety thing, just keeping those screws nice and tight and covered. And as you can see, I have the screws on each of the straps fully covered by black tape, mainly to make sure that it doesn't rub off the paint underneath. So now your gun is completely taped and you're ready to start spinning. But before we get into that, I first want to show you a couple more tapes you can do to help polish up and finish off this look of the rifle altogether. The first one is going to be white strips that we put underneath where the screw is connected to the strap. I'm going to place it on the body of the gun and it's a very short piece of white strip. Essentially all this does is make sure that over time the screw is not rubbing up against the rifle as harshly and it's preventing it from losing paint underneath. So it's really more of an aesthetic thing, but I get a small piece of white strip and I place it directly underneath the screw to make sure the paint lasts a little bit longer. And it looks like that. You can't really see it from afar, but it definitely is doing its job to make sure that no paint is being chipped away. And there you go. The second optional tape is going to be another aesthetic thing. If you have a black bolt on top of your gun and it's being held down by silver screws, I personally like to take a small piece of black tape and cover those screws so that way we can't see them poking out from the bolt. Again, this is an aesthetic and a personal choice, so you don't have to do the step, but I like to make sure that the entire tape job just looks nice and clean. Just like that. And then the final optional step is going to be for performers who are a part of a group, so a school or an independent organization. This is going to be labeling your equipment. So that way, if you're stacking your equipment with others that look like it, you can look for where your name is and find your own personal stuff. What I like to do is just go to the butt of the rifle and write my name in small letters along the backside of the gun. Again, we want to make this small so that way it's not noticeable from an audience perspective, but we'll just take a Sharpie real fast and write our name right along that edge to make sure that we're able to find it later, or if someone else finds it, they know who to bring it to. Again, this is an optional step and this is more so for logistics and making things a little bit easier when you have a group of people, so definitely not required when it comes to taping your gun. And there you have it. Now you have a completely taped and fresh looking rifle that's ready to go ahead and start spinning in any environment you want to take it into. It's a pretty straightforward process, and the more that you do it, the better you'll be at it and the faster you'll be at it as well. Anyways, if you found this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, please feel free leaving a like. And if you have any questions at all in regards to this process or any other process in color guard, feel free to leave a comment down below and I'll help you guys out. Anyways, I'll see you guys on the next one and have a nice day.